If you recently found out that you have a mass in your pelvis and no one's really sure exactly what it is, this video is specifically for you. Otherwise, it could be for my friends, family, other people who are just curious kind of my overall health journey and how this kind of happened with me and kind of the early stages of it, if you will. So I had a 14 centimeter mass that was in my pelvis, and within 2 weeks, it was 14 by 12 by 9 centimeters. And then when 2 weeks came and we were finally able to get an appointment with the surgeon, it was 20 by 20 by 5 centimeters. So a 2-week period, grew, kind of flattened, but also expanded in size. So I think it's just something really important to talk about, and especially if you are East Asian. I feel like I didn't know that tumor mass, fibroids, and these things were so common, and not just in the East Asian race, but amongst a lot of different women that have masses or tumors. So I just wanted to start the conversation, and if you are also going through something similar, kind of what I did to navigate it, and kind of just the part one of my journey. So I'm gonna warn you, there is a lot of like personal information in there related to my body and different parts of my body. So please, if that stuff makes you uncomfortable or queasy, please fast forward, or maybe this video isn't necessarily for you. But if you have questions, and especially if you are someone with endometriosis, something I didn't find out until way after the surgery when I saw the pathology report, I also think this is kind of like good information to know. So in the beginning, I had a UTI, and I have them before. They're not really anything too crazy, but it lasted for over a week, which was weird. So I was like, okay, let me get an antibiotic or talk to my doctor to figure out what it is. So I talked to my primary care physician. They did the urine sample, they gave me an antibiotic, and then I still had that UTI for a week, but once I finished the antibiotic, it was done. During that same week, so now I'm like, so week 1 was just UTI, week 2 was antibiotic UTI, and I had diarrhea. And it was like, okay, again, one of those things that with proper diet and things I can kind of resolve on my own for a few days, no problem. But that was also because I was taking the antibiotic. We were thinking that perhaps it's because of the antibiotic that it kind of like wiped out all the good and bad bacteria in my gut, and that I needed to start taking probiotics, and I started eating like a very brat diet. So bread, rice, apples, or bananas, rice, apples, toast, that type of very basic bland food for that time being. And that helped a little bit, but I still had it. So I had diarrhea for about 4 weeks by then, and it was getting kind of weird, because I also started to feel, and this is the big sign, I started to feel a pain that felt like something from within my body was tugging at my belly button. And I'm like, I've never felt anything like this before. It's not a stomach ache, it's not a stomach cramp, but it just felt weird, okay? I didn't think anything of it. And then also I was getting some pain in, and again, this is a little like TMI, so maybe like if this is uncomfortable for you, close your ears or fast forward, but on the anus and vaginal canal is also where I had quite a bit of pain, and so much so that I couldn't use like female sanitation products like a Pixie cup. I felt very uncomfortable when using the restroom either way. So I was in not a ton of pain, but it was just kind of like this pressure, this tugging that was really uncomfortable. And I, again, didn't think much of it. Hopefully I can figure it out on my own. And then I think within 3 or 4 weeks past, it's like, okay, it's probably time to go see a primary care physician to figure out what it is, because there's all these different symptoms, right? So I'm like, maybe it's digestive issues, maybe it's like urinary issues, kidney problems, I don't know. So I explain everything, and she decides that the best route for me to go first is to my gynecologist, which in the end worked out perfectly. So I said, okay, no problem. I'll do that. So I scheduled an appointment with my gynecologist. This was a new gynecologist because I had a new insurance. So with health insurance, the last health insurance didn't use the same one that I liked, so I had to go get a new one. And when I went there, I was taking urine sample tests, blood tests, whatever. Things seemed okay. And then the key was an ultrasound. Getting an ultrasound, sonogram, whatever, like if you have endometriosis, if you're of East Asian descent, I know a lot of my friends that are also East Asian have had masses in their pelvis that they've had to get removed, or fibroids or things. And again, it's not just an Asian thing either. So even if you're a woman, like, talk to your gynecologist about it, especially because for me it was such an unexpected situation. So if it can happen to me, the way I see it is it can happen to really any woman. So they do the sonogram, and everyone in the room was like, this is weird. And I was a little concerned. I didn't really understand what I was seeing because, the only time I see ultrasounds are, little babies, and obviously there was no baby in me. And they're like, there is a 14 centimeter mass inside your body, and you need to go to the emergency room now. And I didn't know how to react because I have never been to the emergency room. I've never been to the hospital. I never broke a bone in my body. So I was like, what does that mean? What do I have to do? I was extremely distraught. Called my mom about it and was really, really scared for what was to come. So I go to the emergency room that same day in the evening with my fiance, and we were there for hours, right? So we also did a CT over there. I needed to get an MRI. And the thing that was the most confusing is, even though they saw a mass, they didn't know what the mass was. So it could be a tumor, it could be a teratoma, it could be like all these different things. And I'm like, okay, so, and the other part is, unless I am to the point of potentially losing my life, it's not an emergency, it's urgent. So even though I'm in the emergency, I assumed, because again, I'm not very familiar with healthcare. In fact, like, I'm just not well versed in any sort of like medical jargon or anything. And I thought that going to the emergency room, they would just remove the mass immediately because, hey, it's over 10 centimeters. It's supposed to be removed if over 10 centimeters. Okay, cool. Like, yank it out. Let's do it, whatever. And again, they saw it, and I was kind of disappointed because I didn't get the results I wanted. They just said, you're right, there is a mysterious 10 centimeter, 14 centimeter mass in your pelvis. And I'm like, what was the point of this? I don't get it. Whatever. So I have these scans, I have this information, I go back to that gynecologist the next day, and she tells me to get blood tests for tumor markers. And so I go and get that at like a LabCorp, and I'm just like, well, gosh, what do I do? Figuring this stuff out. In the meantime, I love the work that I get to do. I build websites, that's my main business, but on the side I also model and do business development. So I was doing that stuff on the side while there's a lot of waiting around. So you need to get immediate it's hurry up and wait, in the sense that, like, you need to be as quick as possible to get your MRIs, your CT scans, your whatever reports. But at the same time, you also have to wait until you get those results, you get those reports, you get an answer from somebody. So we were scouting around trying to find a gynecologist oncologist. We got a second opinion from another gynecologist, but then we heard of a really, really good robotic surgeon. So when it comes to removing masses, pelvic masses, again, I am clueless when it comes to healthcare. Please note, like, I'm not a doctor, nurse, anything even close to that. But I am a patient, and from my personal experience, I'm very, very relieved that I did a robotic surgery. So essentially, instead of them like, it kind of reminded me of a C-section, but instead of opening everything up, they did smaller incisions and put almost like a straw through that small incision in my belly button to then wrap the mass around like a kind of like a plastic, if you will, and then suck out most of the liquid in the mass to the point that it's like a small prune, and then pull it out. So I have 5 small 1-inch incisions across my, like the line of where my belly button is, and there was one on my right hip. So anyways, I'm kind of fast forwarding a little bit. But in the meantime, you know, actually something that a lot of people have as a common side effect, but I didn't, which was weird, is bloating. So I wasn't bloated. In fact, I was like, wow, like I am really skinny. I didn't realize until later that I didn't have such a knack of an appetite. I honestly thought it was because I was listening to a podcast about eating a savory breakfast, and I was like, wow, I don't have this crazy craving for sour gummy worms anymore. Go me, you know? And no, lo and behold, it was just this mass taking up most of my body. And it's not like my body expanded from the mass either, which was really weird. It just pushed everything else to the side. So it made like my stomach smaller, my intestines smaller, all these different areas, which is also the reason of the pain that I was having. So once I knew that I had a mass and I was trying to collect all this information, lab results, MRI, CT scan, probably forgetting something else, of like data that we needed to show a gynecologist, oncologist before we could get a consultation. So that was a whole nother thing too. It's not like I can call like, hey, gyno-onc, can I meet you today or next week? They're like, no, we need to get all this paperwork first, all these reports first, and once we get it, then we'll reach out to you to finally schedule the consultation to see if this is something really serious. And for me it was, but you know, we just had to get that ball rolling and then wait for them to respond. Yeah, so once I realized that it was a mass and it like, you know, started to make sense, all the different symptoms I was having, I was like, okay, so I would start now for going forward. When I built my websites, I would build it on like actually the rocking chair right there, where I would kind of lean at an angle so that the mass, when it's like this, it was like pressing on all my lower like body parts. But if it was like this, then it wasn't so bad. Or I would take more naps so that I could kind of like relax it. It wasn't so hurtful. So if you're waiting in the meantime, I would suggest leaning back a little bit, or, you know, laying down or trying to find a way to like lay down at most of your work. But I was still able to, you know, I went to Orlando and did like a speech over there, probably one of like my dream experience type thing, was modeling in fashion shows. Things were functioning and seeming fine in the meantime. Until I met my gynecologist oncologist. I didn't meet them yet. I actually met the nurse practitioner on their behalf, because the gyne-onc who would have been my surgeon was more so doing the surgery. So I have to kind of explain that whole story that I explained earlier of the different symptoms that I was having. Oh, I was also really dehydrated. So that is like when I've had diarrhea in the past, I've never felt so dehydrated. And it was to the point that even at some of my work events, before I even knew I had a mass, they were like, oh, she's a little like green in the face, like she should go home. So that was like a whoa there, like something's a little off. And I did lose a lot of weight from that process. So I think by that month I lost about 15 pounds. So it was really urgent for me to try to remove it. Also, a big point is after I did that blood tumor marker test, there is a big indicator called CA125, which stands for a cancer antigen, and mine was at 376, where the normal range is supposed to be 0 to 35. So I was really scared. It was to the point that even my general gynecologist called me and was like, hey, like, you got to be wary of this, you know, and me, like, I don't know what to do. So I'm just asking a bajillion questions on AI, trying to figure out what it is. And, you know, they're saying like, hey, listen, It can also be because of your period. It could be because of a stress or different things that you had this high CA 125. So I'm like, oh, okay, maybe it's not, you know, cancer. We'll see. We don't know yet. So I'm obviously hoping it's not. And then another big thing for me was just looking up other girls with experiences like this who have had a, you know, mass in their pelvis that had to be removed. There was one girl on TikTok who's also Asian and kind of shared her story. I think hers was like a chocolate teratoma. And so it was really like, that was probably one of the few like insightful pieces that I could find. But even in scheduling a surgery, it's hard to book an appointment with the surgeons in terms of availability, even though mine was something pretty urgent. And thank God my fiance suggested to the surgeon coordinator if there had been any cancellations. And there was one that was like 4 days out. So we were very eager to get this going promptly. And, but with that though, it's scary because again, after all these different exams, all these different blood tests, who knows, you name it, whatever, nobody knew what this mass was. And like no professional could tell me it is a blankety blank. And so I'm like, what do we do? And by the time they find out what it is, by having that robotic camera in there, I'm gonna be knocked unconscious. So I can't tell them like, oh my God, this mass is dangerous, or this mass is great, like remove it, don't remove it. Because the other big part of it is they, like something that my general gynecologist said too, is they might have to remove both my ovaries. And I was like, whoa, like I'm engaged, I'm planning to have my wedding next year, and you know, planning to have a family. So I ideally want at least one of my ovaries if that's possible. So I was very adamant about fertility sparing. And, but you don't know, because if this mass has taken over or caused both your ovaries to dysfunction, or if it's super cancerous, then maybe they do have to take everything of your female reproductive organs out of your body. So I did the surgery early in the morning. The day before, I had to do blood tests, sanitation stuff to get ready. I also had to take a shower with like this specific soap, and I had to drink kind of like this sugary tasting, I want to say it was like an iodine drink, like the one they did for the CT scan. But I guess it was like some sort of contrast or something to help me like with the surgery. I don't know, whatever. So I was drinking that as well. Then on surgery day, so wonderful. My fiance and his family was there. My family was there to make sure that I was okay. So I was knocked out. They removed it, woke up, didn't even notice a thing, didn't feel a thing, was not in pain, but I had really bad posture. So the mass was removed. I didn't even know how much was removed. From what the surgeon saw and said, it was a cancerous tumor, but most of it was removed. So I have a little diagram that I'm gonna put somewhere in here. It's not based on medical anything. It's just based on what I researched and my personal experience and kind of the direction I went. So showing it to my doctor was like, this ain't gonna do me any good. But it was good for my family and my friends to see, so that they knew kind of what direction I wanted to go. If the mass was benign, then just remove the mass. If the mass is cancerous, then, you know, take everything out. Because at that point too, we're kind of like, yes, of course I do want to have children, but the priority of having children is having my own life, right? So go through the surgery, that's done. They give me a lot of pain medication, and I was fine the first day, like leaving. I think I left around 4 p.m. and then the next day, so like I think it was about 4 weeks of recovery for mass removal. I was in pain. I was like, oh my God. At first I was like, oh, I'm scared to take these like ibuprofen things and things that are addicting, like oxytocin, I think it was. And I was like, no. And then I was in pain. I was like, Scott, get the medication. So I told my fiance, like, no, get the prescriptions, I need them. So, but even taking them, I honestly didn't feel that much of a difference. The most effective thing for me when it came to the pain was like ice packs, frozen fruits, like frozen strawberries. I have a huge like bag of frozen strawberries that I just laid on my lap while I was like leaning, and I'm like, this hurts so much. So like I couldn't get up, like up and out of bed. It was hard for me even sometimes to get up and out of a chair. Like my entire core, like all my core strength, which I didn't have a lot, I thought, but whatever I did have, it was gone. I lost all core strength whatsoever, and I was like, ugh, this is painful. And so my fiance would help me get up, and then but I would still be in pain in many different ways. Like the first day after was the worst, and then I would say for that whole week it would still hurt. So like I couldn't stand completely straight up. It almost felt like my stitches were stuck together, which it was not the case, but that's how it felt, right? And so I was like, oh my gosh. And then we decided that I would recover with my family in Orlando, because my mom is there, my other family members were there as well that could help lift me up out of the bed and feed me and take care of me. So I definitely think if you are having a mass removal surgery, like if you can't have someone there 24/7, maybe if you can go to a place where people can take turns doing that, that would be really, really great, because that helped me a lot in my recovery as well. Let's see, what else was there in the recovery side of it? I started taking a lot of scar treatment, like Mederma or like this silicone scar gel, massaging it on my scars. Once the scabs peeled off, I was a little afraid of getting those scabs wet when I took a shower, because my skin does scar very easily. But once the scabs started to peel off, then I was like, okay, it's fine to take a shower, everything's fine. And then just in case also, because it was like a cancerous mass that was removed, I'm like, okay, let's clean up what I'm eating. And I was eating fairly healthy already, but I'm like now, and especially after eating basically just like carbs, this brat diet from the diarrhea, like, okay, let's eat something better. And I will say all those symptoms that I originally felt, no more diarrhea. I actually felt, and again, I'm sorry, this is a little more information that I would share with a stranger, but for health reasons, I'm letting you know that I had like a backlog of stool that was ready to go, and was like, finally, get me out of here. It was very dark, but I mean, it was at least out of my body, so I was like, thank God for that. And then let's see what else was there. Yeah, so that was clearing out. I was often, laying down, trying to get work done, but it was still pretty hard, and trying to catch up with like things going on in my life. And then it wasn't until the week after we get an initial pathology report, right? So I'm like, okay, finally, we're gonna find out what the heck this thing is. And unfortunately, it was a cancerous mass, and they took other pieces. Another thing that was crazy in that pathology report was that I have endometriosis, and that the mass was caused by my endometriosis, and I had absolutely no idea. Like, I've heard people talk about endometriosis as very painful periods. So my periods are, I use a heat pad, but they're not so painful that I ever had to miss things going on for my day to day. So I was like, really? Me? I didn't see that coming. My family history was also not one of any sort of ovarian cancers. So I have a grandma who had stomach cancer, and an aunt on the paternal side who had brain tumors, but nobody had this specific, and this one was clear cell ovarian cancer, which was a rare type. And obviously, when I first saw that report, it was devastating, and I was like, how? Like, I'm 31 years old, I meal prep, I'm I'm not the healthy, super healthy queen. Like, I've got some model friends and pageant friends that are just hardcore, okay? But I do eat vegetables every day. I do, like, I love all nutritional whatever things. I go to Orange Theory here and there, so I'm like, I barely went to the doctors and was like, what do you mean? I thought I was taking care of myself. And another big thing that was, you know, wrapping my mind, but honestly, you can't worry about the things you can't control, is how did this happen? Like, how did I cause this? What could it have been? So it was scary for sure. I'll never forget calling my fiance to tell him while he was in Miami, and we were just like, oh. But what was even crazier is, so we call the surgeon, his office, to be like, hey, you know, we found this out, what do we do? What's the next steps? How do we take it from here? And they're like, come meet us today. And the surgeon actually said that, hey, this did not look like stage 3 cancer. This looked maybe like stage 2 usually, when it is epithelial, so like a very cancerous looking thing. It looks more cauliflower shaped, and mine was very smooth. And I, in my report, had both non-invasive implant cells, which were non-cancerous cells just kind of roaming around, and cancer cells. So we actually thought for a minute there that the report might be just wrong. And it was like, what? Really? Okay. So we thought it was wrong, and then but not like, okay, yeah, you're in the clear. It was, hey, let's get a second opinion from, gosh, I want to say it's Cleveland Clinic, Johns Hopkins or Cleveland Clinic, one of these like bigger lab pathology places that can give a stronger opinion. But it took forever. Okay, they thought it was going to come in 1 to 2 weeks, and it came in about 3 to 4 weeks. So when we still didn't get the report, I was losing my mind. I'm like, okay, so just a tip, because I think a lot of these journeys, whether it's pelvic masses, cancers, any health scare, is so much of it, at least for me, has been about my mental health and taking it in. So if someone says that the results should be in this amount of time, don't lean into that. Don't expect it. So maybe double it just in case. So if the results don't come in, so like set up a plan in your head of other things to do until you get that result. Like what I should have done when they said, oh, it should come in 1 to 2 weeks, is expected it to have come in 4 weeks basically, and been like, these are the projects I'm going to work on in the next 4 weeks. Like, these are the websites I'm going to work on. These are the things I'm going to do, whatever. And that wasn't the case. So then once we, but then I was starting to recover, right? I'm starting to finally sit up straight, stand up straight, able to walk around, move around, do things. And so I moved back into Miami, and I was still just kind of waiting for the results until we finally got them. And unfortunately, it was confirmed that I was diagnosed with stage 3 clear cell ovarian cancer. And this, again, it's a rare cancer. I'm gonna make another video kind of explaining how my journey's been so far, but I figured I needed to make this video specifically, again, for any of you who might have a pelvic mass, fibroid, or you're just feeling some sort of weird pain in your stomach, or like pressure or bloating that you haven't seen, just to kind of share what I've had. But I must also say, on a more positive note, that it's not as common for it to be a cancerous mass. It is far more common that it's a benign tumor, it's a fibroid, it's something else. Again, the reason why I even have this episode or video that I'm sharing is because most of my friends who have this surgery or mass removal and things, I'm the only one that I know that it ended up being cancerous. So that's kind of where I wanted to go from there. If any of you are going through something similar and have any questions, maybe ask in the comments, and I'm not that good on responding on YouTube, honestly. I'm probably better on Instagram, which is Miss Elizabeth Tran. But I pray for you. I wish you all the best. And I do highly urge women of all backgrounds and things, and especially if you're East Asian or have endometriosis, get an early ultrasound. And if there is a way that I can go, like, our healthcare system, as we know, has so many hiccups in it, but whoever is in charge or responsible or can talk to somebody, like, I should get a hat that says, like, make early ultrasounds part of our, or make ultrasounds part of our annual pap smear, like include that in there, because ovarian cancers are prevalent, but not only that, but masses in our bodies that we don't even know. Like, I had absolutely no thought in my mind that it was a mass. I thought it could have been digestive issues, IBS, whatever, tummy problems, and then they're like, no, it's this mass. So thank God that we went to the gynecologist. Thank God we found that and had the resources, and my fiance and his colleagues and friends and family were able to connect me to the right doctors as quickly as possible, to get all the information needed and move that forward. So again, I wish you the best, and I'll be sharing more of my cancer journey in the next episode. Thank you.